Howdy folks, we're going to continue our conversation about factoring, understanding how to factor a polynomial expression. Now the video I just did, that hopefully you have just watched, is the video on how to identify, pull out or divide out a greatest common factor from an expression. And now what we're going to talk about is factoring by grouping. Now factoring by grouping looks a little intimidating at first, but if you follow the procedure, you shouldn't have a problem at all. Let's say that you have an expression like this. Let's say that you have x cubed plus 4x squared minus 5x minus 20, okay? And you want to factor this. Now this does not look like this is a cubic polynomial, and so it's a 4-part polynomial, which can be a little intimidating. But the cool thing about 4-part polynomials, and it works with other higher level polynomials under the right circumstances, but here's basically what you do with factoring by grouping is this, is you group the expressions or the terms, you group the terms into pairs. So groups of 2, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put parentheses around the first 2. So now they're in a group together, okay? Then I'm going to put a group, or I'm going to put parentheses around this. Now watch what I'm going to do here with this minus. I'm going to put the minus inside of the parentheses, and then I'm going to put a plus between them. Okay, so now what's happening is it's plus minus 5x and plus negative 20. Okay, now I could take this negative out and make it a minus, but that makes it a little more difficult. So by simply putting parentheses around these two and putting a plus between them, I'm good. Now I have 2 groups of 2. This is a group and this is a group, and now we're going to factor. What we're going to do is we're going to look at each group one at a time and take out the greatest common factor, okay? So if we look at this and we want to take out the greatest common factor, remember, we're going to ask, is there a variable in every term? Well, between these two, yes, there is a variable in each term. There's an x in each one. What is the smallest number of x's? Well, 2. So that's how many we're going to take out of both of them. Is there in the coefficients, can we divide out a number in the coefficients? Well, no, because we've got a 4 here, but only a 1 here. So we're not going to divide a whole number out. So we're just going to take out some x's. All right, so we're going to divide out x's. How many? Well, there's 3 here and 2 here. So the most we can take out of both of them is 2. And so now I'm going to put my parentheses, like I always do with the greatest common factor division. What is x to the 3rd power divided by x to the 2nd power? Well, 3 minus 2 is 1, so it's x to the 1st power. And then what is 4x squared divided by x squared? Well, the x squares cancel and all we have left is 4. So now I'm going to put plus 4 and close a parenthesis. I am now done with that group. Once I take the greatest common factor out of a group, I'm done with that group. Now, I'm going to hold off on the plus just for a second. I want to look here. I got negative 5x minus 20. I want to take out the greatest common factor. So is there a variable in each term? No, there's no variable here, right? So that means we can't factor out a variable, okay? We're only going to factor out a number. So, so is there a number that divides into negative 5 and negative 20? Well, yeah, they're both divisible by 5. And the lead here, the lead coefficient for this expression is negative. So we're gonna take out a negative 5 instead of a positive 5. So we're gonna go minus 5 and then open our parentheses. What is negative 5x divided by negative 5? Well, the negative 5 is going to cancel and just leave the x. Okay? And then what's negative 20 divided by negative 5? Well, it's positive 4, right? So plus 4. And so now we're done with that group. Now, here's how you know whether you did factoring by grouping correctly. The way you know whether you did it correctly is, check this out. See these two in parentheses expressions? They are the same. And that's how you know whether you did it correctly. If you get the same expression here and here, then you did the factoring by grouping correct. Well, it's more likely that you did it correctly. Okay? So now, the question is, what is our answer going to be? Well, this x plus 4 that shows up twice really is only represented one time. So one of your factors is that factor right there. So we have x plus 4 is a part of our answer. The other factor is comprised of the GCFs that were taken out, the greatest common factors that were taken out of those terms. See, over here we took out an x squared, over here we took out a negative 5, and if we put those together, we get x squared minus 5. X squared minus 5. And then we just put parentheses around that, and we're done. We've factored this expression using factoring by grouping. Okay, let's do another example, shall we? Let's say that we have x to the 5th power minus 7x to the 3rd power plus 2x squared minus 14. Okay, so see if you can remember the first thing that we have to do. We want to group into pairs. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, so we want to group 2 pairs of 2, right? So we're going to put parentheses around the first 2 and then around the second 2. Now this one already has a plus here, so we didn't have to put the plus in. It's already there. And now we just do a greatest common factor. Well, what's the greatest common factor of x to the 5th minus 7x to the 3rd? Greatest common factor is x to the 3rd power. No numbers, okay? No whole numbers. So we got x to the 3rd power. X to the 5th divided by x to the 3rd is x squared. Minus 7, x to the 3rd divided by x to the 3rd, that cancels out. And so we just have x squared minus 7. And now what we should have over here, remember, what should we have over here? What should we have in our parentheses after we take out a factor? What should be inside of this parenthesis? Okay, if you remember from the last one we did, there should be an x squared minus 7 in here, right? If we did it right. All right, well, let's see if it turns out that way. What is the greatest common factor in 2x squared minus 14? Well, there's no x's over here, so we can't take an x out. But 2 goes into 2 and 14. They're both divisible by 2, so we can take a 2 out. And this is a positive 2, so we're going to take a positive 2 out. So we take out a positive 2. 2x squared divided by 2 is just x squared, and negative 14 divided by 2 is negative 7. And so sure enough, we've got our x squared minus 7 over here. So that's one of our factors. One of our factors is x squared minus 7. The other factor is the two greatest common factors that were taken out of the two expressions. X cubed plus 2. That's our other factor. X cubed plus 2, and we are done with that example. Okay? I want to show you a neat technique that you could do. I'll do it on this one. Let's go back to the beginning of this example. And what you could do, watch this. There's a technique, if you're not sure, if it's not working out, if your factoring by grouping isn't working out, one of the things that you can do is, what I'll do is I'll put the largest one first, x to the 5th. Then what I do is I switch these two. I'll put the third largest, I'll have plus 2x squared, and then I'll put the second largest, minus 7x cubed, and then the last one, minus 14. I just noticed that it works out sometimes where if you swap the two middle terms, it might be a little easier to do the factorings. So now we'll group again. Now look here, this is minus 7x cubed. So what I want to do is I want to put the negative inside and put a plus between them. Remember that technique? Now here, what's the greatest common factor? X to the 5th plus 2x squared is x squared. That's our greatest common factor. So then we'll open a parenthesis. X to the 5th divided by x squared is x to the 3rd. 2x squared divided by x squared is just 2. Okay? So now, what's the greatest common factor over here? Negative 7x to the third minus 14. Well, there's no x's here, but negative 7. 7 goes into 7 and 14, right? And this is negative 7, so we're going to take out a negative 7. So we're going to go negative 7. And what's negative 7x to the third divided by negative 7? It's x to the third. And what's negative 14 divided by negative 7? It's positive 2. And once again, we've got the same term in each one of these. So one of our factors is clearly x cubed plus 2, and the other factor is x squared minus 7, which are the same factors that we got the last time that we did it. And by the way, it doesn't matter what order you put these in. X squared minus 7 times x cubed plus 2 is the same thing as x cubed plus 2 times x squared minus 7. Because what's happening here? Multiplication is happening there. They're being multiplied because they are factors. Factors are units that are multiplied by each other. And multiplication is commutative. That means that it doesn't matter what order that you multiply. You can multiply in any order. 2 times 3 times 4, which is 2 times 3 is 6, 6 times 4 is 24, is the same thing as 4 times 2 times 3. 4 times 2 is 8 times 3 is 24. So with multiplication, it doesn't matter what order you put it in. It can be in either order. Okay? All right, great. Let's try another example. What if we had 3x to the third power minus 15x squared minus 2x plus 10? Why don't you pause the video and try and figure this one out on your own? Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to work this out. And we got to group pairs. So we're going to group the 3x cubed minus 15x squared. And now look, this is a negative 2x. So before we group it, we're going to put the parenthesis in. We'll move the minus on the inside and turn that into a plus. So we have plus negative 2x and then plus 10. Now here we're going to take out the greatest common factor. There's x's in both. The smallest number is 2 x's, so we're going to take out 2 x's. We got the number 3 and the number negative 15. Both are divisible by 3. So we'll take a 3 out. And if we do 3x to the third divided by 3x squared, the 3's cancel. X to the third divided by x squared is just x. Negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5, and the x squares cancel. Now over here, the greatest common factor there's no variable over here, right? No x, so we're not going to take an x out. There's a 2 and a 10. Well, what goes into both 2 and 10? 2 does, right? So, and our lead coefficient here is negative, so we're going to take out a negative 2. So negative 2, and then negative 2x divided by negative 2 is x. 10 divided by negative 2 is negative 5. And look now, we have the same factor in both of these, x minus 5. So that's part of our answer, x minus 5. And then our two greatest common factors that we took out are 3x squared and minus 2. Put those in parentheses, and it's now factored.